Stafford protected, looking for Kupp. Did he get the feet down? They say yes, a catch for Kupp. First and goal for the Rams. Stafford looking up top. Got him wide open. Kupp to the end zone. And the Rams take the lead. Touchdown. Stafford to Kupp.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour, the first NFL Sunday of the season in the books. Connor Rogers, Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher at the top. You heard the great Mike Tirico calling great Cooper Kupp moments. Despite a Lions win, Cooper Kupp back on top, man.
Big
little Cooper Kupp.
Big Cooper Kupp this year, Matthew.
Yes. Yeah.
Bigger and better.
Yes. My little Cooper Kupp is all grown up. Yeah, I mean, look, we talked about this throughout the preseason about how we thought you could make a strong argument for Cooper Kupp over Puka Nacua just straight up, but certainly at cost. We all loved Cooper Kupp. He was on the preseason love list for a reason. Did I expect 21 targets and 32 fantasy points in week one? No. But, Jay, we talked about it. It was one of our best bets on fantasy football pregame as well. I talked him up on Football Night in America. That worked out. My Amon-Ra and Khalif Raymond did not as much. But look, helped by the fact that they were trailing in game script and, the fact that Puka was out, but monster performance.
Yeah, and even before Puka went out, Kupp still physically, he looked like the same guy. I think he was going to head for maybe not 21 targets if Puka Nacua was healthy, but certainly double-digit targets comfortably. And in 2021, I had a big bet on Jonathan Taylor to win Offensive Player of the Year at 70-1 for an ungodly amount of money, which I never ended up seeing because Carson Wentz blew a 17-point favorite game in Jacksonville in Week 18. But I was cheering against Cooper Kupp all season long, and last night brought me all the way back to 2021 because he looked like the same guy. He looked magnificent. The toe tap was just vintage Kupp.
Even when they knew it was coming, they couldn't stop it. I mean, McVay is such a genius at sort of moving Kupp around.
It was crazy. The motion king.
Right, exactly. And him and Stafford, Kupp and Stafford just have such a simpatico, right? I mean, they're very much like us.
Yes,
it's
very
exactly
similar.
like us.
We are McVay, Stafford, and Cooper Kupp.
Yes.
As you see the next-gen stats route chart from Cooper Kupp, I mean, the Lions knew where the ball was going, but there wasn't much
42
stopping
snaps
him.
and 12 touches in motion in week one, the most by any player in a game over the last 7 seasons. Kupp was in motion all the time. You see here, right there, what's crazy is that's a block. I mean, I think Cooper Kupp doesn't get nearly enough credit for as good of a blocking wide receiver as he is, but the point is he never comes off the field. And because he is such a good blocker, defenses have to account for that. They don't know when he's going in. Is he going to block? Is he going to run a route? What's happening here? So the point is again, we don't need to belabor it. He's awesome. He enters Monday Night Football as the second best wide receiver in fantasy football, and certainly the best one that wasn't arrested on Sunday morning. He was doing this without the motivation of, we'll get into that in a second. But the fact is, while I don't think he's going to get a 43% target share or 32 fantasy points, Cooper Kupp, wide receiver one, this is completely legitimate.
Yep. Is there any reason why Cooper Kupp just doesn't immediately vault into the tier of guys like Jamar Chase, certainly A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson? Is he even in the CD Lamb type of world just immediately after what he showed yesterday?
I don't know how he wouldn't be. If you were drafting today, you can still draft a league. If you want to go on Yahoo, you can still do one like a guillotine league. So there are people that will start leagues this week, next week, whatever. I don't know how you not draft Cooper Kupp as a top, as a wide receiver one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's Tyreek is still one,
yes.
And then after that, you can make a case for a lot of guys.
And someone that would agree with that is his quarterback, Matthew Stafford, who had a lot to say after the game on Kupp's performance.
It's I'd love to know what his yardage was running today. I mean, we asked him to move all over the place and handle a whole lot of things, both in the pass game and the run game. And he leads that room really well. That's why you see those other guys step in and come in and play the way they do. So proud of him, happy for him that he played the way he did today. And like myself, we just hard on ourselves and want to make every play if we possibly can. But, it's proud of the way he competed today.
Cooper Kupp drinks free. No surprise there. The unfortunate side of this, guys, and part of the reason that he had 21 targets is Puka Nacua left the game early with a knee injury. He tried testing it out, came back briefly, then he left on the cart. I mean, and this is somebody, Matthew, that was hurt this summer, which makes it that much more
Yeah,
concerning.
I mean, that was one of the concerns that we talked about that felt like with Nacua banged up. But Nacua, by the way, got banged up last year as well. I mean, like it got sort of, because it was such a breakout year, people sort of like glossed over it, and Kupp got hurt as well last year. But yeah, Nacua hurt somewhat last year, hurt in the preseason, which is why we're talking about, it looks like Kupp has overtaken sort of that alpha number one wide receiver role for the Rams offense. He's scheduled to undergo testing on the knee today. We'll find out more. But as of this taping, it's 10:40 in the morning. We don't know the status of Nacua. It does seem like if Nacua were to miss some time, that Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Tutu Atwell, in that order would sort of be the pecking order. Demarcus Robinson played 92% of the snaps yesterday. Johnson 66%. You might see some Colby Parkinson as well, but feels, so to me, I feel like maybe you pick up Robinson. We'll talk about that tomorrow on the waiver wire show. But other than that, let's hope for the best with Puka Nacua.
Let's move over to the Lions side, who won this game, by the way.
Jay, do we need just a quick question before we move on? Do we need to ask Cooper Kupp to come on the show so that you can take a photo with him, crop Connor and I out of it, and replace that photo with a photo of just you and Puka Nacua?
Well, producer Steven did such a flawless job putting your face in AI yesterday, so maybe we can just AI Cooper Kupp onto my Puka Nacua photo.
Maybe that's
the play.
Possible.
That could be the play, yeah, for sure.
Maybe we could have that happen.
Yeah, by the way.
On the Lions side of things, breakout game for Jameson Williams. And not breakout game because it was week 1. Breakout game for a guy that this is year 3 of his career. We've been waiting for this for the former first-round pick. Catches 5 of 9 targets, 121 yards. Of course, the touchdown. He had 13 yards on the carry. Jay, we just got to see the speed element that Jameson Williams brings to the Detroit offense.
Yep, so he goes 5 for 121 on the touchdown, but to me, the most important stat, he saw 9 targets. Like, he just wasn't seeing big volume last season. Like, he saw 50% more targets than Amon-Ra St. Brown, who we're going to talk about. But, I mean, this guy is someone who, and we've spoken about this before, that coming out of the draft, like, if he didn't get hurt, there was a chance that he was going above Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Drake London. Like, he's that type of talent. First year as a write-off due to injury. Second year, I don't think he can fully write off, but like, he had the gambling suspension. It was disrupted. He never seemed to really get in rhythm. They raved about him all off-season, and that seemed pretty fully realized last night.
Yeah, I caution to sort of listen, great to see Jameson Williams do what he did as well. 32% target share. Almost half of his pass attempts that he got were on deep targets. But seemed like, to me, Connor, a more expanded route tree than what we've seen before from Jameson.
They finally trust him out there consistently.
Yeah,
they never have.
Played 85% of the snaps. But Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta, it was just, by the way, it was just a bad week overall. Elite tight ends were bad. Some big-name wide receivers were bad. We're going to get into it as well. But Amon-Ra St. Brown joins a long list of highly drafted wide receivers, including Puka Nacua, including Drake London, including Chris Olave, on and on and on. We'll get there to all those guys. But just had a bad day, right? It's the worst fantasy game of his career as a full-time player. Only his third healthy game with fewer than 7 targets since the start of 2022. Just 3 for 13, but did get 6 targets. So 22% target share, ran 100% of the routes. He was out there. And the fact is that the Lions' just passing game. I'll tell you this, I gave out one of my bets that I gave out on Football Night in America, which did not cash, by the way. I always have to do a parlay. And so my parlay was Cooper Kupp over in the receiving yards, check. But Amon-Ra over 80 yards, I took an alt line. I took over, and I took Jared Goff 250 passing yards. Now, Jared Goff last year at home averaged 280 passing yards a game. Amon-Ra St. Brown had at least 80 receiving yards in every home game last year except for one. And neither of them came close to those numbers. It just felt like, the Rams did a good job of controlling the clock, and so there were less possessions for the Lions. And also, it felt like the Lions were being effective. They were running the ball effectively. They didn't need to throw as much. Right. Their defense, the Lions' defense, played really well. So, Stafford had the bad red zone pick as well. So because the game never got into shootout territory as well. So it was just a more balanced team, more balanced game on both sides of the ball. I'm not ready to bail on Amon-Ra St. Brown or Sam Laporta just yet. I get very frustrating game. I have a lot of shares of both guys, but I think let's celebrate Jameson Williams, but I'm not ready to bail on either the other guys. Yet.
No, I think you have to knock them down a little bit just because of how good Jameson Williams looked and just, again, how dominant the running game was. Like, they threw one pass in overtime and they marched down the field. They threw the ball one time and it was to the running back, Jahmyr Gibbs. I will say, like, last year, Jared Goff was second in the entire NFL in pass attempts last year. That has never made sense to me. Like, this is like an O-line running the ball.
It's not who they want to be.
How do they have 605 pass attempts in the regular season? So I think that'll probably tick down a little bit, but still, like, it's still Amon-Ra, it's still Sam Laporta. They still play in a dome 14 of the 17 games.
I will say they're home against Chicago next week, but then at Minnesota, home to Jacksonville, home to Buffalo. So again, they are 4 straight games. 3 of which are home. 3 of the next 4 games are at home. 4 straight games for the Lions in a dome. Obviously, their one road game of the next 4 is at Minnesota. So I do think better days ahead for the entire Lions offense. So we will see there. But yeah, overall, just a disappointing day. It was a disappointing week 1, just overall in terms of a lot of fantasy stars disappointing.
We move over to Texans-Colts, a big-time division matchup right out of the gate that lived up to the hype. The Texans holding on.
Talk about 2 teams that did not disappoint.
No, this was one of the rare games.
Yeah, where the fantasy stars showed up.
29-27, the Texans hang on in this one, and a lot of it was on the back of their new running back, Joe Mixon, who had 30 carries for 159 yards, a touchdown. He caught 3 passes. We got to hear from Mixon after the game, a veteran that thinks he could reach a completely new level this year.
Oh, yeah, man, I definitely do. And I'm just, finally really getting tapped into, the player that I know I am for real. And, the guys is encouraging and doing everything, man, to make sure this thing is still up and going. And I'm just glad, man, that I'm probably one of the forefront person to really set the tone and let people know, what it is, playing this. And you got guys like Neek out there making huge plays, and CJ being CJ, and Steph coming in and making crazy plays, even Tank. And everybody just complimenting each other, the run complimenting the pass, and the pass complimenting the run, man. So we got a hell of a thing that we got going. We just got to keep getting better each and every week.
Jay, something you talked about a lot last year was that Bobby Sloak wanted to run the ball. It just felt like sometimes the game would skew towards, hey, CJ Stroud's got to throw and bail us out. 30 carries for Mixon, effective carries. This is the balance the Texans offense wants.
Yeah, this is how they want to play. And I think, to me, what stands out most from this game, like even beyond the individual player stat lines, Texans had the ball for 40 minutes. Wow. An NFL game is only 60 minutes. That's insane. They ran 76 total plays. They picked up 26 first downs. They were just on the field constantly. They just have, and you've spoken about this, Matthew, all preseason about, like, what poison are you going to pick? Like, are you going to leave Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins and Tank Dell open, or are you going to let Joe Mixon eat a little bit on the ground? I think that's the poison that the Colts chose. And look, the Colts almost won the game. Like, it didn't go that poorly for them, but I mean, Joe Mixon's going to have a massive year. Like, he was so unsexy in the preseason. There's every chance that he's a top 5 running back.
We talked about this all preseason about how, hey, this is cheap volume. It is, no one's going to be excited. No one's going to be like, ooh, Joe Mixon when you draft him, and yet all he's going to do is get a ton of work on one of the best offenses in the NFL. And you're correct, exactly. Like, if you're a defensive coordinator, you're like, I either load the box and then I've either got Diggs, Tank Dell, or Nico Collins in single coverage, or I'm going to play back and whatever. And then there's going to be open running lanes for Joe Mixon. That's what happened. They took what the defense gave them as well. And look at their upcoming schedule here. Home to the Bears that just got, that gave up a lot of yards to Tony Pollard. At Minnesota, right? I don't think that's a run defense that scares you. Home to Jacksonville, right? That just let
Achane get away from them against Miami.
100%. And then they're home to Buffalo, which just let James Conner run all over them. There's not the Texans are going to have a very good offensive year, and Joe Mixon, as long as he stays healthy, is absolutely an RB1 as well. I don't know that he gets 33 touches for 159 yards every single week, but the fact is that, to your point, they want to be more balanced on offense. It was one of the reasons why we were slightly down on C.J. Stroud in the preseason, obviously in a monster game here. C.J. Stroud was on the love list, as was Joe Mixon this week, so good week for the love list this week. But I do think that ultimately Mixon's workload is secure, his talent secure, and the offense is going to be one of the best in the NFL.
Yep. My concern with the Texans from a fantasy perspective would be that they had the ball for 40 minutes, and here's how many targets their wide receivers got. Nico Collins, 8, Tank Dell, 7, Stephon Diggs, 6. That speaks to how kind of closely those guys might be clustered. And look, Nico Collins has the big 55-yarder, Diggs gets the 2 touchdowns, so those are the guys that we focus on. Yeah. I think week by week, it's going to be extremely variable, and there are going to be weeks where they just really hyper-focus on running the ball.
Yeah, I think so too, but to the point, like again, it's 1 week. All these guys are good enough, this offense is good enough, that scores enough, Stroud is good enough. I think all 3 of these guys are every week starters. Okay, yes, did you get what you wanted out of Tank Dell? 3 for 40? No, but if Tank Dell's getting 7 targets in a game from C.J. Stroud, more often than not, that's going to pay off. And you're not going to be able to predict, this is going to be a Stephon Diggs game, this is going to be a Tank Dell game. No, you just ride it out. And I think all 3 are talented enough and going to be in scoring position enough that I think if you invested in the Texans offense this offseason, you feel really good this morning.
Yes, I think so. It's just going to be a little frustrating week to week with those guys, but I think that, and look, they were all, even if they're not going to get double-digit targets, that offense is so efficient that they're still going to be able to produce decent numbers.
The good news is if anyone can support 3 relevant fantasy wide receivers, Stroud is now in that bucket of trust.
Sure.
With the offensive line they have. On the other side of this game, a much different approach from the Colts.
The one other thing I was going to say about Diggs that was really interesting, though, his average depth of target was 1.5. Diggs was in the slot. They were doing dink and it'll be interesting to see if this evolves. But Collins and Dell were the guys that were sending deep, and Diggs was the guy that they were using all the short stuff for. Here, as you see, Diggs just on a real crosser, boom, gets into the end zone for a touchdown. We talked about this on Fantasy Football pregame Sunday morning about how we knew Stephon Diggs. We were Diggs is getting into the end zone today. We talked about this. This was one of our better anytime touchdown bets.
And the space that the other 2 create for him, he never saw this in Buffalo.
No.
I mean, the fact that Nico Collins, monster on the outside, contested catches, Tank Dell the speed, Diggs is going to be able to run free over the middle of the field.
He is. Again, we talked about this. Go back and look at my 10 list of 10 preseason column, any of the stuff we were talking about, how the fact that, yes, Diggs was people were oh, Diggs is done. And I'm he's on a 1-year prove-it deal with an elite quarterback in an offense where he suddenly doesn't have to shoulder the load. He's not going to get the number 1 corner of a defense most times. And they're going to, again, they're using him in the slot. They're going to move him around to free him up and create mismatches. And so it'll be interesting to see if they keep him just with that low depth of target, if they just switch it around. But at the moment, it seems like Stephon Diggs is they're Keenan Allen. It's super weird. Yep. You know what I mean? But it's obviously very effective.
On the other side, Anthony Richardson, when a quarterback has 19 pass attempts, you usually would think, oh boy, this is not going to look good in fantasy. It's different for Anthony Richardson. He completes 9 of them. It doesn't matter. Over 200 yards passing, 2 of them are touchdowns. One of them, undoubtedly the best throw of week 1. Truly this rare air, this throw.
This is it if you're watching, just
in a phone booth, and just chucks it more than half the field in the bucket.
Yeah, to Alec Pierce.
To Alec Pierce, of all people.
As we all described. As we all
anticipated.
Yeah, anticipated. He slips there as well. Anthony Richardson, off his back foot, just chucks it a country mile. And good for Alec Pierce, who had a nice camp, but I think we were all sort of it's Michael Pittman, it's Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
And
we're waiting on Josh Downs to return.
Yeah, we'll see, but still. One
of the weirdest passing charts you'll ever see.
Yeah, so you see here on the screen a tweet from my guy Ian Hartitz over there at Fantasy Life. Anthony Richardson broke the passing chart, LMAO. That stands for laughing my ass off, by the way. I know you guys aren't kept with the
we don't have that one on the screen.
Rolling on the floor
laughing. That's what
laughing,
that stands
right?
for.
I'm a ruffle
but anyway, he shows the next-gen stats thing as well. Look, I think that we'll talk more about Alec Pierce tomorrow during the waiver show. But I think what's exciting about Anthony Richardson here is 2 things. One is sort of shows, and as we go through the day, we'll sort of talk about it. Again, everything we said in the preseason, kind of the cheat code quarterbacks, the guys that, as Rich Rebar likes to call them, the Konami code quarterbacks. But these dual threat guys that it points with their arms and their legs, those are the guys that showed up, right? And so Richardson obviously is one of them in a big way here. Had the rushing touchdown as well.
over 50
shout out,
rushing yards.
Yeah, shout out to Lawrence Jackson, who this was his best bet. This is the bet he gave me to take me home during pickup lines last night. I went home with Lawrence, and we cashed that bet. It did work out. Nice job. Shout out to LJ there. But more importantly, I think what's exciting is that the concern on Richardson, he was being drafted so high, he was drafting as a top 6 quarterback in almost every draft, was, hey, would the passing develop? And we had such a small sample size. Like, we saw it last year. But it was such a small sample size. Would it continue? And against a good defensive team that knows him, this is a playoff team. The Texans were a playoff team last year. They won a playoff game.
Defensive head coach.
A defensive head coach. And Anthony Richardson showed up. Like, again, you talk about the bomb, but so the passing was there. It's still unrefined a little bit.
Right.
But it's made enough improvements, Connor, that you feel good about where you are.
I mean, look at that throw down the field where there's a rusher right in his face, and he kind of has to reset himself, gather himself. There's just not many guys in the league can make that throw. That's the point, that he doesn't need 40 dropbacks to be a top 5 quarterback in fantasy. And I mean, this is a Cam Newton game. Like, there's no way around it. No. You complete 9 passes, over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Oh, and then I run for almost 60 and a touchdown. Like, this is a Cam Newton type of fantasy performance.
Yep. Very unpopular, unfun opinion from me, but I feel worse about Richardson after yesterday. But just because of what is sustainable, he completed 3 50-plus yard passes, and I get that is part of his game, and he can do that. But he's not going to do that every week, and he's probably not going to complete 2 every week. And what is concerning to me is the accuracy just hasn't. And it's one game. Look, he's going to get better. This is his 5th game in the NFL, but his accuracy wasn't there in college. 9 of 19 yesterday. Now, he never had the ball, which was an issue, but I just wouldn't pencil in Anthony Richardson for a top 3, quarterback finish in fantasy. He has the upside, but still, I think there's still question marks.
I think top 6 is completely legitimate. Here's what I'll just say is that I think for fantasy purposes, we can debate him as an NFL quarterback, but for fantasy purposes, the fact that he's doing basically 2 things, he's running and he's chucking it deep, is really good, because maybe he doesn't complete 3, but if they keep chucking it deep more often than not, especially once they get downs back and they've got an underneath option. But the fact is that with Pittman and Pierce, and we didn't even see A.D. Mitchell really yesterday, but when they get him involved as well, for fantasy purposes, that's pretty exciting that it's not dink and dunk, that he is chucking it deep or he's running.
Yep, that's fair. There is definitely a divide between NFL impact and fantasy impact.
A guy that we can pencil in for a top 3 quarterback fantasy finish, Josh Allen. The Bills hold on against Arizona, close game, 34-28. Josh Allen, 18 of 23, 232 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, thrown to a lot of new pass catchers in this offense. He also, of course, has 39 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground. We got to hear from Allen on the game, not really about him, but more so the confidence in throwing to new receivers.
Everybody's going to find a way to get their touches, and again, I don't know what the stats were and who caught how many and how many completions I had, but it felt like every time I looked up, it was somebody new finding a way to get open and catch the ball, and I thought Joe did a great job of calling the game. Obviously want to get some guys more touches to get them going, but it's hard to argue with the results that we've got right now.
From a fantasy perspective, Matthew, this was kind of a classic Allen superhero game of him. The guys around him from a fantasy perspective, especially the ones we expect big things of, like Dalton Kincaid, not much going on.
Josh Allen was the consensus #1 quarterback in fantasy. He's also a proud Fantasy Life investor. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but yes, he was clearly the #1 quarterback taken off the board in every draft. He showed why in this game. This was, yet again, just a typical put you on my back superhero. The 2 rushing touchdowns were ridiculous. He throws for 2 as well. I think the bigger story isn't Josh Allen is great, because we knew that. We knew that already, right? And Big Show learned that the hard way, when I used him, when I used Josh Allen just to defeat him, to crush him like a grape.
Are you winning that matchup?
Oh, by a lot. I had the highest score in the League of Ascals in Week 1, just so you know. Jayden Daniels and Josh Allen. My team that Yahoo gave a D- to, by the way, Jayden Daniels and Josh Allen, looking pretty damn good, by the way. Thank you very much. Sorry, Big Show. Better luck next week. He's 0-1. But what I will tell you here about Josh Allen, what's most important, is not how good he is, but again, the target distribution. The target distribution was interesting. I think what's exciting is Keon Coleman looks like Keon Coleman played
capable.
He's
capable.
He had a role. I think he actually led the team in routes run and in snaps played. He was out there a ton. Shakir gets in the end zone. I guess if there's there's obviously a really disappointing game here for Dalton Kincaid, guys, and that might be the bigger concern, right? It's just how do you break down these pass catchers as well? It was a bad week all around, and we'll get into this a little bit later. Bad week all around for the elite tight ends, and I was somebody that, I was a big elite tight end strategy proponent. So I will raise my hand and say, like, after week 1, that does not look good. I do think better days are ahead, especially for Kincaid, who played 88% of the snaps as well. I know, 2 targets, 1 for 11, but just he ran a ton of routes. He was out there. Better days are ahead for Dalton Kincaid, I think, and for tight ends in general, but specifically to this offense. My other concern is it's clear that Keon Coleman's going to have a role, but the rest of the guys, the Khalil Shakir, the Curtis Samuel, Mac Hollins, the issue you have with the Texans, I think is a bigger issue with the Bills.
Yeah, well, and again, another unpopular, unfun take from me, and I'll be more positive about the next game, but I don't think we learned anything about Buffalo in this game. I think the Cardinals have a bottom 2 defense in the league. What we learned is what we already knew, which is that Josh Allen is amazing. He's a top 2 quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion. We already knew that. I have no idea how this is going to shake out with Keon Coleman, with Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel. Their next 5 games, the Bills, we're going to learn everything that we need to know. At Miami, home Jacksonville, at Baltimore, at Houston, at New York Jets. That is an unbelievable slate of tough defenses and tough teams, and we'll learn what we need to about Coleman. And look, Dalton Kincaid's going to be better. That's not going to happen again. A weird game overall.
It was. I mean, they were down. They were negative game script, but whatever. We expect the Bills to be, fantasy friendly as well. James Cook looked great, which was nice. James Cook even got a goal-to-go rushing attempt. Now, he didn't convert it, but still, it was very exciting.
It existed.
At least there was hope that James Cook might score a rushing touchdown from in close, maybe someday. But anyway, I hear what you're saying. But look, they had to go. They were trailing in this game, and they started throwing a decent amount. James Cook still got a decent amount of work here. I think this is what it is. I think you heard Josh Allen just talk about it. I think it's going to be tough to sort of trust any one. Kincaid's going to have a role, and just the fact that Keon Coleman had a 90% route participation and 23% target share.
That is key. That's the most important thing I think came out of the game.
By the way, and I'm using all these stats from. If you go to FantasyLife.com, it's all free. The utilization report. We have a whole utilization chart for every single game, every single player. Go check it out at FantasyLife.com. It's powered by our friends at PFF. So anyway, but FantasyLife.com, we have all this game data for every single player, and that's where I'm getting all these numbers from.
And that's super relevant for our next player in Marvin Harrison Jr., who, listen, quiet debut for Marvin Harrison Jr. He catches 1 pass on 3 targets, but he played 90% of the snaps.
He did.
The target share wasn't there. Now, I know a lot of people are going to point to he was wide open for the potential game-winning touchdown, and Kyler didn't see him, didn't get him the ball. But you just want more from Marvin Harrison Jr. right away in this offense.
You do. You absolutely do. And I will say this about, right, and I think that if Kyler sees him and hits him in that touchdown,
the narrative changes.
The narrative changes. The day looks a lot different as well. I think what the Buffalo Bills did, listen, smart defensive head coach, smart defensive coordinator, good defense. They're like, you know what? We're going to take away Marvin Harrison, and we'll figure out the rest, right? And that's ultimately what they did. I also, on that particular play, I have to go back and look at the all-22, but I remember watching that particular play live. Kyler Murray was under a ton of pressure.
Yep. I think he might have been going the other way. I need to look at it again,
right.
too.
He was under a ton of pressure, and I think that just the way – I think that, again, I have to go look at the all-22, but this is my guess, is that Kyler was quickly under pressure, ran the other way to your point, and as soon as whoever was on Marvin Harrison saw that he was going the other way and maybe scrambling, or he ended up getting a first down on that play, just kind of left Harrison, and so just the way it looked on TV looked worse than it was.
I agree.
Than it actually was in real life, playing out momentarily. I thought Kyler Murray, yes, he is my ride or die, but overall, I thought he played well. He had a couple throws that I'm sure he'd like back, but listen, they had a chance to win down at the end. My guy, the human Dortch, Greg Dortch, got a lot of work. I think he remains to be a guy in deeper PPR leagues. And there was towards the end, it felt like there were two plays that on that last series where there was some PI calls that did not get called.
You'd like to get at least one of them.
Yeah, it looked like, especially there was one down at the end where Dortch got mugged, and I'm just like, come on, really? That's not a, so that was, Buffalo's lucky to get out of there with a win. Arizona played tough, and we talked about this.
Yeah.
Arizona's probably going to win 4 games this year, but they're going to be in all of them.
I think they'll win 6
Yeah,
games.
maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they can score.
They can
They
score.
are
They're
trying
gonna
to
be
figure out the
scrappy.
defense, but Kyler can just make things happen.
Just before we move off of Marvin Harrison, Justin Jefferson's first game of his career, 3 targets, 2 receptions, 26 yards. Next week, he had 3 receptions for 44 yards. That season ended up going 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns. I think Marv is too good to fail.
Yeah,
I agree.
would be happy to trade low for anyone that's panicking on him as well. Same for Trey McBride, 29% target share. 4 of his 9 targets came in the slot. Again, bad day at the office for Trey McBride, but better days are ahead. Again, he's running a ton of routes. He's out there on every snap. Elite usage. He'll be fine.
Over in the AFC, a big matchup between the Dolphins and Jaguars. The Dolphins kind of steal this game, 20-17, or the Jags lose it. Devon Achane, 10 carries, 25 yards, and a touchdown. But more importantly, Matthew, 7 catches for 75 yards.
Yeah, almost a 20% target share in this one, which is a career high in both catches and receiving yards. And if they're going to use him that way, which I don't know why they wouldn't, that's really exciting. He got a little bit banged up in this game, left, came back, as did Raheem Mostert as well. Credit the Jaguars defense. I thought they played well. The Jaguars should have won this game.
Yeah.
The Jaguars pissed this game away.
They really did.
If I was producer Steven, and I'm not, but if I was producer Steven, I would be very angry at my Swaguars.
Producer Steven's 0-1.
Yeah, he's 0-1.
Other
Brutal.
AFC East fans were not thrilled watching
His
this
Jaguars
ballpark.
lost. He lost to Connor in the show league. It's been a bad day to be Steven.
All because of Cooper Kupp, by the way. I had no business beating him. So he's had his heart ripped out twice on Sunday.
Yeah, producer Steven.
It's a tough go.
Tough go for Steven. But I think, that's what's exciting. I mean, look, heading into Monday Night Football, Devon Achane is the number 3 running back in fantasy. And, there was a lot of people saying, like, hey, why is Achane going higher than Mostert? Well, this is why. I mean, there's now, what's exciting, though, is like, exciting may not be the right word, but at least I think we now have more clarity into this Dolphins running back room and sort of the pecking order. And it's clearly, I had Achane ranked over Mostert. I think almost everyone in the industry had Achane ranked over Mostert as well. But there was some talk about should they be closer, and I think the clearly answer is like, no. We love Raheem Mostert here, friend of the show, friend of the podcast, but ultimately there is a clear pecking order in Miami.
Yep. It's brilliant that in our lives, excitement comes from clarity in the Miami Dolphins backfield, but I agree. And I think this is the thing with Achane is that you said where he ranks among running backs this week. He does that despite going like 10 carries for 25 yards.
Right.
So he didn't do it much on the ground. He gets in the end zone.
Yeah, there was also a weird game again. I will say this, and we'll talk about this more tomorrow on the Waiver Wire show. Jalen Wright becomes a really, if he's still available in your league,
he
Jalen
should
Wright,
be stashed on your bench
100%
immediately.
rostered.
He is going to play, and it might be earlier than we even expected this year.
Exactly. And the last thing I'll just say here, there's no real fantasy analysis, but just shout out to Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill, gets arrested on the way to the stadium. Whatever. He's placed in
That's
handcuffs.
my job here, just kind of proper words.
He's put in handcuffs.
Outside the stadium.
Outside the stadium. That's a scary situation. And to be able to, basically get out of that and get your, I've never been placed in handcuffs, right? By a cop. I'll just leave it at that. And,
Damn it. All right, I'm going to Monday Night Football.
I've never been placed in handcuffs by an officer of the law.
Absolutely
but I
terrifying.
suspect that if I had been, that would be really, really scary. And, and then for him to basically get in the mental framework, in the mindset to go out and just absolutely crush, which he did. He winds up as wide receiver 3 going into Monday Night Football. Actually could have had another 52-yard touchdown as well. They just missed. Anyway, shout out to Tyreek Hill. Monster day for him.
To be fair, you making the viewers picture you in handcuffs, not by a cop, that's way scarier than anything Tyreek Hill had to deal with yesterday. So,
listen, if the joke is there, I'm taking it. How long has
that was on a
working with
platter
men?
for
Come on,
you.
Exactly. I'm just,
You've never slammed something home quicker.
At some point, if the lane is there, I'm taking the layup. It is what it is, America.
My goodness. Over on the Jacksonville side of things, a bit of a scare if you have Travis Etienne because not a lot of people expected this kind of split. 12 carries for Etienne, 44 yards. He does get the touchdown, but Tank Bigsby with 12 carries and 73 yards. And let me just say it like this, Jay. Tank Bigsby looked pretty good, all things considered.
He looked better than Travis Etienne.
Right.
Last year, it was Tank Bigsby fumbling to lose the Jags game.
Oh, boy.
Yesterday, it was Travis Etienne fumbling.
A brutal fumble.
To effectively lose them.
Yeah, yes. Game-costing
the game. And, we spoke about during the week, or at least I said that, with all this coach speak about, we're going to make this more of a timeshare, it's like, well, let's see it first. Well, we saw it yesterday, and this seems like to be a legit timeshare. And Tank Bigsby looked better than Travis Etienne.
Yeah, if there is one thing that for everyone that, Tank Bigsby, again, is going to be another priority pickup tomorrow. I agree with you. I thought he looked better to the eye test than Travis Etienne, and certainly that fumble, that red zone fumble that cost them the game is not going to help Etienne. If there's one thing that makes you feel good about Etienne if you invested in this, which is that he actually ran, he was on 58% of the routes. Like he had a 58% route participation. So I know, in 16% of the targets, I know in terms of the box score, 2 for 15, it doesn't really pan out. But it does seem like that even though the workload in terms of running the ball was split between Etienne and Bigsby, Etienne is going to be involved much more in the passing game as well. He ultimately played 68% of the snaps. Etienne did yesterday. A 20% target per route run. So all those are positive signs for his usage in the passing game as well. But certainly you feel worse about Etienne as a draft pick today. It was just a bad game for that offense. Christian Kirk completely disappeared. Cost me a guillotine league, by the way, Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk was on the love list, one of my few misses for week number 1. If there's one positive that I want to take away, other than, hey, Tank Bigsby looked great, is that Brian Thomas, I think Brian Thomas, if he isn't already, is the number 1 wide receiver. Like, if I was drafting again today, give me Brian Thomas over Christian Kirk or Gabe Davis. Like, looked awesome, 21% target share, 76% snap rate, the only end zone target. That was an awesome catch as well.
Just too much talent.
Looked ready for prime time.
That's it, right? Like, you're just too talented at the end of the day. And they have good receivers. That's not the problem, even counting Evan Ingram in that bucket. But this guy is just too freakish, too gifted.
He got absolutely mugged in the end zone by Jalen Ramsey. And 2 things there. One, if you just add, I don't know what that was, 40, 50 yards to his stat line, looks a lot better on a touchdown. 2, that was Jalen Ramsey. He's cooking Jalen Ramsey, who was awesome in other parts of the game but got destroyed by Brian Thomas there.
Yeah, very disappointing game for Christian Kirk. Better days are ahead for him and Ingram, but ultimately, Brian Thomas is the real deal.
Our last game here, the Bucs take care of business against your Commanders, Matthew, 37-20. Baker.
Can I do a quick impression of my Commander secondary?
Oh.
Here we go. Here we go. All right.
Oh man, they didn't watch your teach tape against Lawrence.
Matthew's
there you go.
one.
There you go.
Oh,
there you go.
Fine. Yeah.
Master thespian.
Yes, Daniel Day-Lewis.
There you
Lincoln
go.
meet Matthew
There you
Barry
go.
as
There you
Commander
go.
secondary.
I mean, I think it was a fairly accurate representation.
Baker Mayfield will agree with you. 24-30, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns. It actually truly looked to. I'm not going to lie, there are just people on their couch in America that could hit Mike Evans for this touchdown. They just throw it up and hope he comes down with it.
Yeah. And
he does.
That actually wasn't even terrible coverage.
No, he's there. He's there.
That was the best moment the Washington secondary had.
This is the most competitive one out of everything we're going to show. Wide open.
It's just ridiculous.
Great day for Baker, by the way. QB2 right now, as it stands. Almost 30 fantasy points.
Yeah, 3rd best fantasy game of his career. He completed 80% of his passes.
Man, the Browns could use a guy like that right
now. I know. Listen, we love Baker Mayfield on this show. Friend of the podcast, Baker Mayfield. I'm surprised Jay doesn't have
a photo with him. I do have one photo with him. That actually might be my move.
Right, exactly.
Who has an injury? Welcome in, Baker. I'm going to do that in the break.
Am I cut out of that one too?
Yes,
yeah,
you
of course.
are.
Okay, great. Anyway, but we talked to Baker last year. Just an awesome human being. We love Baker on this show. And it was just, I will say this. I hated to see him cook my Commanders, but I will say seeing the Browns struggle while Baker cooks
glorious.
that was awesome.
The irony of it.
Seeing Deshaun Watson struggle particularly.
It's also good. We'll get there, but I think the interesting thing here for the Buccaneers, look, Godwin and Evans, great. They were exactly what you thought as well. We saw more Bucky Irving than I think we expect. I will tell you, like, all the rookie running backs we were talking about, like, hey, these are some good, interesting late-round stashes. They all came to play. Rookies or young players like Tank Bigsby as well. I watched that game pretty closely, and I will just tell you that Bucky Irving looked pretty damn good, I thought, to me. I don't know where – that's the only –
He's going to eat into Rachaad White significantly, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, like, Rachaad White did get a bunch of targets, like, whatever. He had a, 21% target share in this game. Bucky Irving just 7%, but just,
But it's week one. It's only going to grow. That's my concern.
Week one. That's the point. Anyway, it was pretty good. Bucky Irving's going to be a thing.
Yep. How'd you feel about Jayden Daniels?
You know what? I thought Jayden Daniels had some really good moments and some not great
rookie moments.
Yeah, some rookie moments. I think you could make an argument he played the best of all the rookie quarterbacks yesterday.
I would fully agree.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
He was default, the two greatest words
they might not be close on that front.
he was better than Caleb. He was better than Bo Nix, and I would argue that he probably had less talent around him than either of those guys. I mean, I don't know. Bo Nix doesn't have a lot around him either. But the positives from a fantasy perspective is this is why we talked about it. Like, he tucked it and ran, right? No quarterback had more rushing attempts this week than Jayden Daniels. Like, he tied with Lamar for 88 rushing yards. He gets two rushing touchdowns. I don't understand why that happened, because the game's over and you've got Brian Robinson and this guy's your franchise, and I don't know what we're doing there.
Yeah.
Like, you got to protect this kid, but he does get the two rushing touchdowns as well.
Great if you started him.
Yeah, 1,000%. But that's what we talked about. That's why I had him as a top 10 fantasy quarterback. That's why he was on the love list. That's why he was as a top 10 guy for me in the rankings, which is that rushing just gives you such a floor. But Terry McLaurin, 4 targets, 2 receptions, 17 yards. They sort of shut him down. There was not a lot else to write home about the Commanders. Brian Robinson gets in the end zone. It's kind of an even split between him and Eckler as well. Hopefully better days are coming for McLaurin. Zach Ertz did get some usage, but in a game in which should have been negative game script and them throwing a lot more, they didn't. He tucked and run a lot.
Some injuries we're tracking, notable week one injuries. Of course, Puka Nacua, we already talked about that. We'll know more about the knee. Kenneth Walker did have an abdomen injury, which he's had that in the past, by the way. He didn't sound overly concerned this time after the game.
It's
but
just another thing.
It's happened before. Keep an eye on that one as much as he sounds okay. Jordan Love, we know he's going to miss a couple weeks with the knee injury. Avoided the worst case scenario with that. Keenan Allen, Jake Ferguson, keep an eye on that one. That could be a little bit more serious. David Njoku could miss some time as well. And Jordan Addison with the ankle as well. We're taking our first break. When we're back, of course, it's Monday on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So we got your Weekend Warriors and your Sunday Scaries coming up right after this.
J.K. Dobbins behind Herbert. Hand off to J.K. He's through the line. Breaks a tackle into the end zone. Touchdown! Chargers! J.K. Dobbins.
Back a healthy J.K. Dobbins, and boy, did he look good in this Chargers backfield, Jay.
He did. I mean, he looked super explosive. He has this thing, though, where as soon as he gets into the open field, he just dies.
Right, gears go
happened in
crashing
Baltimore
down
as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's going to get better as he gets more conditioned. But no, I think even more than the fantasy production, it was a kind of a 50-50 split with Gus Edwards. Just the story of J.K. Dobbins, what he's overcome. That offensive line looked really good. And I think they're going to lean on the run a ton. So J.K. Dobbins, look, he's not going to break those 50-type yarders all the time. As we can see his comparison with Gus Edwards, 10 carries for Dobbins versus 11 for Edwards. But Dobbins gets in the end zone and has those 2 big runs. So very exciting for J.K. Dobbins.
Great story, obviously, as well. And I think the exciting thing there is just 3 receptions, 4 yards. You're like, whatever. But the fact of the matter is that he got, that J.K. Dobbins got 3 targets. And he caught all 3 balls. If he's going to be involved at all in the passing game, which we don't expect Gus Edwards to be, I think that becomes exciting as well. This was a little bit of the hot hand, so he got the hot hand, but it's a great story as well. So kudos to you if you grab J.K. Dobbins late in your draft. At Carolina, at Pittsburgh, home to Kansas City are the next 3. You feel good about that upcoming schedule. Pittsburgh's not a great matchup, but you feel really good. I got a feeling J.K. Dobbins is going to make the love list next week at Carolina.
A guy that is always involved in the pass game, Matthew, Alvin Kamara, but it was on the ground this week where it stood out. 15 carries, 83 yards, he gets the touchdown, and he was getting the ball in the red zone.
Yeah, again, it was Carolina. But, kudos to the Saints that just absolutely dominated Carolina as well. Alvin Kamara becomes, again, sort of this cheat code. We talked about him a lot in the preseason where it's Jamal Williams, not really much. You got to know, by the way, we're blowing him out touchdown. Kendra Miller not really there. They've got some Taysom Hill, but just again, cheap volume. Alvin Kamara is just another one of these guys that we were just like going too late in drafts because he's snoozy and boring, but it's going to be cheap volume. I don't think this is that much of a fluke. They're not going to blow teams out by 30 points the way they did the Panthers, but Alvin Kamara is going to be the focal point of this offense quite a bit.
Jay, a massive upset for the Patriots over the Bengals, and it was really on the back of Rhamondre Stevenson.
Yeah, this offense is going to be very conservative all season long. As long as Jacoby Brissett doesn't turn it over, ball control. 2022, Rhamondre was an elite fantasy option. 1,000 yards out of the backfield.
Just needs to be healthy.
It just needs to stay healthy. And look, against the Bengals had a terrible rushing defense last year. They were 28th in terms of success rate. But Rhamondre is going to be a huge part of this offense. And if there's one guy you want in the Patriots offense, it's Rhamondre, and it's not close.
I would agree with that, but I'm going to play the role of Jay here and be slightly negative. It's a great story, by the way, and he was on my hate list. I will own this. This was a bad call by me this week. Unbelievable game for Stevenson. Here's an upcoming schedule, though. Home to Seattle, really good run defense that just shut down Denver. At the Jets, at San Francisco, home to Miami. I feel like Rhamondre Stevenson's value right now is as high as it's going to be all season long. They're clearly going to try to lean on him, but there's nothing going on in that passing game. Better defenses are going to be like, we're going to make Jacoby Brissett beat us.
The Vikings take care of business against the Giants quite easily, Matthew. Aaron Jones, almost 19 fantasy points. He gets 14 carries. Very effective with them, 94 yards, and gets the touchdown.
This is what happens when you free Aaron Jones. The entire Vikings offense looked pretty good. Jones, as healthy as he's been all year, 6th straight game with 100 total yards dating back to last season, including the playoffs as well. He averaged 6.7 yards per carry. He had 5 different runs of 10 or more yards. The explosiveness was there, the creativity in the backfield. And by the way, Sam Darnold looked good enough in this game that teams aren't going to be able to focus on the run game again because of Jefferson, because of how well Sam Darnold played. Hope springs eternal that he stays healthy, and Ty Chandler's an important insurance back to that roster. But for now, Aaron Jones locked in as a top 20 running back.
Jay, a tough loss for the Titans, but Tony Pollard, one of their big offseason acquisitions and signings, looked really, really good, and he kind of made his stamp that he's the guy, not Tajay Spears.
So this is maybe the most fantasy relevant thing out of any backfield. That Tony Pollard had 16 carries, Tajay Spears had 4. Will Levis's second half was like the end of Requiem for a Dream, if you've seen that movie, the final 5 minutes of that, which I won't spoil because I don't do that. But it was just all collapsed around him. But Tony Pollard in the first half in particular looked like the guy that he was supposed to be last year.
All right, Sunday Scaries. This is where it gets tough here, guys, and we got to start with those Bengals and Joe Burrow. Notoriously a slow starter, Matthew, 8.1 fantasy points.
This is brutal. Look, I get it. No T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase was limited, and the Patriots are a good defense. Give credit to Patriots. It's a good defense. Come on. Stop it. He was bad. The offense was bad. Zach Taylor's offense was not creative at all. His average depth of the target was 5.6 yards. It's all dink and dunk. He had 3 attempts, literally just 3 attempts of 15 or more yards downfield. You have Jamar Chase. What are we doing, people? This was brutal. They're on the road at Kansas City next week as well. A Chiefs team, by the way, that has had 10 days to prepare for whatever that was in Cincinnati. Just absolutely brutal. His first game without a touchdown pass since week 4 of last season. Embarrassing. Bad. That was a bad day.
Another brutal
bad day
one.
at the office. I blame the offense, not Joe Burrow.
Yeah,
for the record.
It was all not good.
Right.
And a little bit of the same was the Falcons for Drake London, Jay. Not a good day for Kirk Cousins, alarming day I would call it, and that had a trickle effect on Drake London.
Yep. Best player in football I saw yesterday was TJ Watt. He completely wrecked that game. He wrecked the passing game for the Falcons. Didn't have it on my bingo card that Ray McLeod was going to get 7 targets to Drake London's 3. I'm kind of throwing that game out because it was the first game Kirk Cousins, Steel's defense was so great. Still not a good sign for Cousins the way he looked, or that Drake London got such little usage.
I thought he looked terrible. Drake London did run a lot of routes. Hopefully better days are ahead. Drake London killed me in a couple leagues, but I will just say this. $100 million guaranteed contract. If we're going to give Deshaun Watson all sorts of crap for his big money that he's not producing, that's awful for somebody that just got a $100 million contract.
Wow.
He looked bad.
Putting him under the mic.
I'm just saying, right?
Oh, he looked
Kirk Cousins, you lost at home to a team that only put up 6 field goals.
I was looking up Michael Penix's offensive rookie
Mike
of the year
Penix time.
Yeah.
It will be
That was
sooner
awful.
rather than later. Last one here, Matthew. Chris Olave. It's great the Saints almost scored 50 points. They didn't need Olave to do anything in this game.
They absolutely did not. Better days are ahead for Chris Olave. The Panthers at least have a good defense. Other side of the ball in that game, Diontae Johnson, absolutely brutal. Saw a lot of Marshawn Lattimore. I know, they're awful. Bryce Young did not look good, but I do feel like better days are ahead for Diontae Johnson based on volume. And last thing with Amari Cooper, bad game there. But again, Watson looked awful. But they're not always going to play Dallas every week. Cooper, I think, will still get his.
But they might have Watson every week.
They might have Watson every week.
Bryce Young and Deshaun Watson's like Chuck Knobloch thrown at first base at the moment. Like, they just seem dumb.
These are all players, like, I'm not panicking just yet. I'm raising my eyebrow, but I'm not panicked just yet on these guys.
We're taking one last break. When we're back, it's last call. We got our best bets. Monday Night Football, Jets-Niners, right after this. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. It's time for the last call. We're looking at the most bet Monday Night Football props on DraftKings. Of course, for Jets 49ers, Breece Hall rushing and receiving yards 100 plus is #1 at plus 110. Breece Hall receptions over 3.5, that's minus 160. Christian McCaffrey's rushing and receiving combined at 100 plus is minus 215. Garrett Wilson receptions over 5.5, that's up to minus 140 now. Breece Hall rushing and receiving yards, if you want it at 75 plus instead of 100 plus, that's minus 265. Jay, I feel like you're a guy that's going to be in on some Breece Hall props tonight.
Do you like my Breece Hall? I'm going over for Hall, over 15.5 rushing attempts. I just think that first game of Aaron Rodgers, they're going up against Nick Bosa, really solid pass rush. They're not going to have him drop back 40 times tonight. So I think it's a Breece Hall game. The Niners last year were 26th in rush defense EPA. They were a bad rushing defense. Not sure they're going to get better. Dre Greenlaw not going to play, obviously. Linebacking core a bit decimated. Interior of the D-line, not really the strength of the Niners either. So I think it's a Breece Hall game. He gets at least 16 carries.
And we'll get a look at this new Jets offensive line. What about you, Matthew?
I'm just taking the under. It's 43 here.
I like this play a lot.
Look, the over-under is 43. To your point about Breece Hall game, so what are the Jets going to try to do? It's Rodgers' first game back in a year. They want to slow the pace down, try to take the crowd out of it. A lot of Breece Hall, to your point. And then on the other side of the ball for San Francisco, going up against a very good Jets defense. They're also a traditionally slow pace of play team. Brock Purdy's had a rough camp. Brandon Ayuk just getting back there. Give me the under in this game.
I like it a lot. I'll go with another prop here. How about Tyler Conklin over 28.5 receiving yards? He did this 10 times last year with Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian. He's going to be a tattooed Tunyon in this offense right now.
Okay.
10 times he did it last year. He'll get over 28.5 tonight with Rodgers playing. Might be the #2 target in this offense for now.
Who wins the game?
I think the Jets win. Yeah, I'm a bit worried about Purdy against an elite defense.
I think the Jets cover. I think they lose a close one to San Francisco.
Very on brand.
I just need Garrett Wilson to have a monster game to save me in a couple of guillotine leagues. Let's go, Garrett Wilson. It's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay and Connor, I'm Matthew Barry. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you, Cooper Kupp, for all that you do for America. We'll see you. Good luck tonight. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Barry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.